Hello, my name is Alexis Eiland, and I will be presenting speech production as it pertains to breathing. So first, the role of breathing during speech production is extremely crucial. So it's essential for generating airflow to produce those speech sounds. And this is important to sustain speech flow. So moving on, airflow for sound production, starting with exhalation for phonation. This is important for producing speech sounds. The diaphragm and the intercostal muscles work together to control the airflow that is used in exhalation to make sure that there is enough air pressure to vibrate the vocal folds. Moving on to generating speech sounds, this is produced by the vibration of those vocal folds. And this is consistent and controlled air that is needed from the lungs, and it is required to push the air out of the lungs through the trachea, over the vocal folds, and through the oral cavity, creating the speech sounds. I'm going to play a quick video clip that gives us a demonstration of that, and it introduces some of the topics that we're going to talk about in the next slides. And like I said, some of those topics are going to be talked about in these next couple of slides. So starting with pitch and volume control. So determining pitch control is necessary for regulating the pitch of the sound. So the amount of air pressure on the vocal folds determines how tight or loose they are pulled together. So like mentioned in the video, the more air pressure, the higher the pitch. The less air pressure, the lower the pitch. So this also contributes to the volume control. Loudness is determined by the force of exhalation and the amount of airflow. Breath control should match the loudness and softness for effective communication. If someone's screaming at you, you're not going to be able to hear them. And if someone is talking really quietly, you're not going to be able to hear them. So it needs to have that balance. Also, the stronger the airflow, the louder the speech. So if you ever hear somebody say diaphragmatic breathing, the stronger the airflow from the deep breath through the trachea, over the vocal folds, and through the oral cavity, the louder the speech. The softer the airflow, the quieter the speech. So sustaining breath during speech requires proper breath and management for limited interruption during extended speech production. So speakers should learn to take time to breathe with natural speak patterns. So this can be seen through pausing between sentences, taking quick breaths, and while maintaining that speech fluency. Also, pauses and intonations also allow speakers to manage the rhythm and flow of pitch to contribute to intonations or rise or fall in pitch, and also the porosity or patterns of stress at the time of spoken language. So moving on to breathing and articulation. So first, we're going to talk about precision in articulation. This is breathing that aids in the articulation of speech sounds. So again, breathing is needed in order to articulate speech sounds. So plosives like and require bursts of air in order to produce the speech sounds. So insufficient airflow can result in unclear speech. And in the next slide, we'll talk about some disorders that result from insufficient airflow. And also the clarity of the speech. Without proper breath control, speech can be difficult to understand, like I mentioned with somebody who talks too loud or who talks too low. Also, not enough air pressure can affect the clarity of some consonants and vowels. This is extremely important for those with speech disorders who have difficulty maintaining those flows. And I have a quick little video again to sum up everything we just talked about. Moving on. We're going to talk about how breathing and speech disorders. So starting with the speech disorder, how it affects breath, an example, and then the treatment. First, apraxia of speech, which is a motor planning disorder, and the brain has difficulty sending the correct signals to the muscles. It affects our breath with difficulty initiating speech, which results in irregular breath support when speaking. Also, trouble controlling breath to match different speech sounds, making speech sound strained. And it's due to lack of muscle control, and inhalation and exhalation are both impacted. An example of this is a child with apraxia of speech may have to take multiple breaths in the middle of sentences because they cannot maintain steady and controlled breathing, and that makes speech very unclear. So a treatment for this by an SLP would be speech sound production therapy, which is an intense practice of sound and syllables. An example can be listen to me, look at what I do, watch what I do. A speech disorder can be, another speech disorder is dysarthria, motor speech disorder, caused by weakness or paralysis of the muscles, and it can involve the respiratory system, the larynx, and speech production. So how it affects the breath. It has difficulty matching the breath with the speech, resulting of shortness in breath, making that speech unclear and inconsistent loudness and projection. So an example of a person with dysarthria motor disorders have flaccid dysarthria or muscle weakness, and they may have a reduced respiratory strength, making it extremely difficult to take full breath and to regulate their airflow, and their speech will sound choppy and breathy. So an SLP treatment for this is the Lee-Silverman voice treatment, which focuses on increasing vocal loudness by using high effort speech vocal exercises. Next is stuttering, which is a speech disorder that results in the interruptions or the repetitions of sounds and syllables. So how it affects the breath is people with a stuttering disorder struggle with increased tension in the respiratory muscles, causing blocks and interruptions in speech, again, making the speech unclear. Involuntary disruptions in airflow occurring when initiating speech in vowels and or certain other words. An example of a person with stuttering might take a deep breath before saying a difficult word and struggle to get the airflow out and to produce a sentence without pauses or repetitions. And lastly, the treatment for somebody with stuttering can be fluency shaping, which is aimed to reduce stuttering through easy onset, which is taking a deep breath and slowly going into the sentences, or a slow speech breath, or prolonged speech. Our last speech disorder we're going to go over is the respiratory diseases like asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, otherwise known as COPD, which affects both breathing and the need for fluent speech. How it affects your breath. COPD affects lung capacity, making it hard to regulate breath while speaking in full sentences. And people with COPD also struggle to sustain speech over long periods of time without running out of air. Someone with COPD may have reduced ability to control their breath when they speak, making their voice sound weak, breathy, and kind of hard to understand. And lastly, a treatment for somebody with CPOD can be diaphragmatic breathing exercises, which encourages breathing from the diaphragm, improving air intake and breath control for fluent speech. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.